This is Made in America with Neil Asbury and Rich Rothman.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Boy, Rich, do we have an incredible show today. We got lots to talk about. Incredible things have been happening all around us. And, just what's happening in the world, what's happening with supply chains, what's happening with energy, what's happening with inflation, and, of course, what's happening with our jobs. And very, very important topics, very, very important topics. But, Rich, we've done a lot of shows in the past on labor unions, and we haven't done that for a while. Of course, under the Trump administration, there wasn't a lot going on with labor unions other than the Supreme Court saying that you could not force people to join labor unions.
Well, that was the big California deal.
That was the big California deal.
They lost big time in California.
And Illinois as well.
Yeah.
And, in other words, to get a job for the state, I believe it was the state of Illinois and the state of California, you could not be forced to join a union, right? Because a lot of the union money, what do they do with it? These dues, and they use it for political advocacy. So you're forced, to get a job, you're forced to pay money into a fund, which is incredibly corrupt because, how this money is being used. And then it's also being funneled into a political party that you could be very much opposed to. I mean, just philosophically, you could be opposed to it. It's just not right. Hey, I'm going to take money from you so I can give it to a political party to advocate policies that could be philosophically and you could be passionately opposed, but yet it was being forced upon you. Fortunately, the Supreme Court said, no, can't do that.
Well, that's right. And also we watched over the last few years some of the major votes, i.e. Volkswagen in Tennessee.
That was a big
big
one.
Fight.
And
big,
oh
big.
my goodness.
We had Steve Moore on like every other week talking about it.
And then, but it lost. I mean, despite the administration, even Volkswagen themselves, dumping in all kinds of money and advocating for the place to be unionized, they said no, right? Hey, look, you unionized up in Michigan and, up in the Midwest and in these states, and look what happened to the auto industry. It was decimated. But yet all these foreign manufacturers came to America in South Carolina and Texas and Tennessee, and the foreign manufacturers can make cars in America with American labor with no problem. But Americans can't make cars in America without losing money.
Well, they went to right-to-work states.
Well,
look at the states that they went to.
Exactly.
They didn't go to Detroit because they didn't want to,
they didn't want to deal with that.
They didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want to have job banks.
Well, they don't want to.
But we get ahead of ourselves.
They don't want to emulate that.
Yeah.
But yes, America can make cars with American labor.
Guess the side I'm on.
And be very profitable.
Exactly.
That's the punchline. Hey, but Amazon just had a vote, and Amazon's facility in Staten Island actually voted to create a union. But now this isn't an outside union; it's a union that they formed internally, which is very interesting. New York Times is calling it the biggest victory for organized labor in a generation. And it was only 2,600 votes.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
And it's the biggest victory, and it just took 2,600 votes for the biggest victory
Well,
in
just
a
for
generation.
perspective, Neil, some bar mitzvahs in New York City that I went to had more than 2,000 people. I'm just saying, just for perspective. Let's not get too crazy about this New York Times.
Well, then that just shows you
all the news that fits the print.
How sad it is for unionism in America if it takes 2,600 votes for the biggest victory.
2,600 votes, and coercion can be unbelievable. I want to hear what Sean has to say.
Well,
this is going to be good.
We have Sean Higgins from the Competitive Enterprise Institute joining us right now to talk about Amazon, Staten Island, its facility, this union vote, and what does it mean. Sean, welcome to Made in America.
Thanks for having me on.
So, Sean, what's astounding to me, it was 2,600 votes that voted yes. And it was like everybody's walking around with T-shirts on, and the NLRB is giving the union folks all kinds of access and really pushing the agenda, They were only able to get 2,600 votes. There was 2,100 votes that said no, but an astounding 3,500 people did not vote at all. did not vote at all. So to me, the no votes are basically leave us alone. We're fine. We're happy. So between the no votes and the people that didn't vote, it's overwhelming that people were really not interested in this union.
Yeah, but then why did this is a good question. I have to ask Sean. Why didn't they vote? I mean, you get what you vote or not vote for.
So wasn't complacency? They don't care. It's like leave us alone. We're not so passionate about a union, so we're not going to vote. I mean, what happened there?
Well, I can't speak to exactly why the 3,500 people, actually 3,515 people didn't vote at all. I mean, maybe they didn't expect to be at the fulfillment center for that long. Maybe they were only working there temporarily or didn't see it as a career. So it didn't matter to them whether there was going to be a union, which is a more sort of long-term thing. Maybe it was complacency. Maybe they just literally weren't aware. I mean, it may sound strange given the amount of publicity and attention, but some people just don't pay attention to the news, or don't pay much attention to the mail or that type of stuff. So you never know with these things. The thing about these elections is, you're right. It's strange. It's strange that such a small number of people can determine the outcome, but that's actually the way all sort of elections work. If only 3 people vote in a sort of mayoral election, but 2 of them vote for one guy and the third one person votes for the other guy, 2 people who vote for one guy win, even if it's a city of 1 million people. And it's the same sort of principle applies in union elections. Now, this doesn't make this. There's a bit of a problem because these unions are often exist in perpetuity. So not only does that minority get to determine things, but they get to determine it for people who show up and get the job later on who never even had a chance to vote in the first place. But those are the rules, and that's just sort of how it exists. Right or wrong, good, bad, or indifferent, that's the way it is.
Well, so it sort of sounds like the 2020 election. But, all right, so what happened? I mean, I'm sorry, I had to say that. It was just sitting there for me to say it. But, all right, so let's find out. What is going to happen to these people? Are they going to have buyer's remorse in this whole scenario? Because it really sets the stage. I mean, that's what I think they're really excited about. They're going to go, Amazon to Amazon to Amazon. Is that a possibility? Is that what's going to happen? Is this going to be a ricochet effect?
I don't think so. I mean, the unions have been trying to organize Amazon and its fulfillment centers for a while, and part of the reason why this is fake news is this is the first success they've had. There's a big buildup, you may recall in the news last year, about a vote at a Alabama facility where actually the union got completely trounced. And that was one where everybody thought the union was going to win because of the claims that they made. The reason why in this particular case the union won was because it was actually something closer than we ordinarily see to an actual grassroots attempt. This is an independent labor union. It isn't affiliated with one of the larger ones that they've created. And the fact that there was some actual Amazon workers were the ones apparently the driving force behind this was one of the reasons why I think it was more successful in these other cases where it's outside people coming in and trying to tell the workers what they should do, and the workers telling them to go take a hike.
So what does this mean for the overall, getting Amazon? I mean, look, so you've got roughly, 7,000, 8,000 people in this entire facility, 8,300 people in this facility. So, I mean, that's just a small amount of the overall Amazon workers, right? I mean, so.
Well, yeah. I mean, they were going to put 25,000 workers in Queens.
Does this mean that this is opened? Is this opened the floodgate for other facilities to follow this model, or even other types of companies like Starbucks or whoever?
Well, some of the Starbucks did go union.
Right, but a lot haven't, and there's a lot of other very large companies that haven't. So what does it mean for them?
There's always a lot of hype in these things when it comes to union organizing. They're always trying to create the sense that there's some sort of rising tide of workers who are doing this. But in the case of the Staten Island one, this does appear to have been something of a local phenomenon where there were some people actually at the site itself who decided that they wanted this. But that's not something that's going to repeat itself automatically in all the other cases where they have fulfillment centers. I mean, that's the reason why it didn't happen in Alabama, and I suspect that's suspect that in very, very few other cases you're going to see this replicated. Actual grassroots phenomenon are actual grassroots phenomenon, and it's based on, the quirks of some of the people there and that type of stuff. But it's not something that creates a domino effect as much as they like to claim that that's what's going to happen or pretend that that's going to happen. I think what's going to happen is they'll still make some efforts, but we may see a few other votes, but they may win, they may not win, but you're not likely to see a cascade. We have seen some cases of individual Starbucks unionizing, and that there does appear to be some effort there. But there are plenty of cases where they've attempted to do it, and the workers at the Starbucks haven't done it. And in the case of the Starbucks, you also have to recall these are places where it's a lot of heavy turnover, a lot of heavy work, and some people probably just thinking to themselves, I'm not going to be, working at Starbucks, 6 months to a year from now. So what does this matter one way or the other? Maybe I'll vote for it, maybe I won't. But I don't think you're going to see this tidal wave that a lot of people claim. It's certainly far too early to say that there's any type of rising tide.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to need a lot more than this to say that unionism is on the rise in America, right? But I mean, the New York Times was so desperate. They had to make this one of the biggest events in a generation.
But you know what it gives them? If you think about it, it does give them an optic. It gives them an optic, and they can play off the optic, good, bad, or indifferent, whether it really helps them or not. They have something positive in an optic to play.
Well, that's exactly what the New York Times is doing here. Hey, Sean, thanks for being on the show. Sean Higgins from the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I have a lot more to talk about. Very, very interesting stuff. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we're having a very, very good time with you today. We're happy that you're with us. We still got a lot more to share with you, a lot more to talk about, so much going on in our world. Rich, when I was, some years ago, I was the vice chair of the National Export Council, and I was chair of the Florida Export Council, and then, I became the vice chair of the National Council. And it was overseen, the National District Export Council was overseen by the Department of Commerce in Washington, U.S. Department of Commerce. And there was a young guy there who was in the Obama administration who was the interface between us and the administration. And so I was up in Washington a lot, and, we got to spend a lot of time together. And he went on to be a congressman, actually representing Silicon Valley, and has had an incredible career, and that is Ro Khanna. And you see him a lot, and I was really struck at the time that I worked with Ro. I mean, I was very much a conservative, and he was very much a liberal, but we shared drinks and dinner, and we had a lot of really great discussions.
Did you ever pick the tip up? Did you ever pick up the chip? Did you do that? Well, I don't know who paid. I don't know if an Obama guy would do that. I have no idea.
Yeah, but he was a government worker at the time. Well, he's still a member of Congress, so I guess
they made more money than all of us.
Federal employee. But he was a really good guy. I really enjoyed working with him. And, so I followed his career. He went on to become a congressman and, was doing a great job. And he actually went on to become the campaign manager of Bernie Sanders. And at the time, I really couldn't understand it because, every time that I've been with him, I mean, he just seemed like the most moderate, reasonable voice and of the Democrat Party. And I really enjoyed talking with him. And I think, today he represents Silicon Valley. He obviously has a lot of wealth in his district and also a lot of very liberal people in his district. Yeah. But, so Ro, you see him a lot and he's, making the rounds. But let's listen to a soundbite from a Congressman, Ro Khanna from California, about raising taxes on the successful and wealthy. Let's hear that.
Well, some of it, of course, can be written off, and some of it would be raising the tax. And that tax, I think, would be on people who have done very, very well. The reality is we can move the top tax rate up to 39%. That's where it was under President Clinton. We can have the corporate tax be 25% and collect it. How is it that some corporations are paying 0% tax? We can make sure that people who are very, very wealthy are paying at least 20%. That is what teachers and firefighters pay. So we need tax reform in this country so that people who are wealthy and corporations are wealthy are paying their share.
There you go. The Democrat can't talk about taxes without saying paying their share. You got to pay their share, their fair share. Especially, his mentor Bernie Sanders is the fair share. We're going to listen to Bernie here in a second too, but 39%. You say 39%, but that's before state taxes. That's before local taxes.
That's your
before
baseline.
City taxes, and so if you put it all together, America, based on this tax rate, is the highest taxed country in the world. I mean, It's like of all the industrialized or all the, the advanced economies of the West, the highest taxed country in the world. Now, we did reduce taxes, but for a very, very good reason, to make our tax rate competitive. China's tax rate is significantly lower than ours. So how are we going to compete with China and all these manufacturing jobs and everything else we want to do when we're taxing the bejesus out of our entrepreneurs, our businesses, our small businesses? We're taking all the money away from them, the most productive part of our economy, and giving to the most unproductive, the government, right? People like Rhoda go spend our money. So we did it for a reason. And right now, this economy, despite Joe Biden, is producing jobs, but not because of Joe Biden, because we did take these very important steps by making our tax structure competitive.
Well, the thing is, to give you some context, he was addressing the idea of forgiveness for student loans. And he was discussing how we would find the money to pay for that. And the answer was, this typical Democrat, tax the heck out of America. He's going to go after the wealthy people again. So you have this splitting from the wealthy to the non-wealthy, to the young versus the older, to the corporations versus the corporations. And he just completely touted the Marxist, Bernie Sanders line that, they're not paying their fair. I mean, fair share is right out of the Marxist doctrine. So, and that goes back a long, long way. So to me, he's no moderate anymore, Neil. This guy's not a moderate any more than Bernie Sanders is. We should listen to Bernie.
Well, let's listen to Bernie. Bernie was talking about corporate greed. Now, he's talking about paying your fair share, and obviously that's all about greed and creating these us against them. But Bernie's really great at this, creating the this cultural war and using greed as the root cause. Let's listen to Bernie.
During all of this instability, that this be a moment in which large corporations continue to enjoy huge profits. Corporations are making record-breaking profits, and over 700 billionaires in America became nearly $2 trillion wealthier.
Well, I know a lot of corporations that the last couple of years have been absolutely a catastrophe. How many businesses have we lost? How many businesses has had this tremendous setback that they're still struggling? They're still struggling to try to cope up with. Rich, I'd like to talk more about this.
We'll get back to this later.
We got a lot to
we're
going to
get back to this later because I have a few comments about it.
It's very important because of inflation and everything else. But we're going to have Seton Motley joining us here.
Good man.
From lessgovernment.org, and we're going to talk about chips and China and how do we deal with that, because there's a huge risk. Stay with us.
Promoting American industry. This is Made in America with Neil Asbury and Rich Rothman.
Hey, welcome back to Made in America. We're delighted you're with us and staying with us. We have a lot more to talk about today. One of the things that has been bantered around, you hear it every day, Neil. Every day you hear of something, chips. Chips. Why can't I get a car? Chips. Why can't I get, my Sony's chips? Why can't I get everything? Why can't I even get furniture? Because it's made with machinery. They don't have chips. Why can't the Caterpillar people deliver their Caterpillars for the farmers? Well, they're out of chips. Why are there no V8 engines in Mercedes for this year and an AMG division is shut? Well, they have no chips. So chips are very, very important, and all of a sudden people are, wondering, and they're realizing how we're tied into it. Now, when you think about what's going on in the world, with the Ukraine situation, and we're looking at this axis that's developing between China and Russia, and we're looking how Western Europe is dependent upon Russia for certain things like energy, and now we're looking at us being dependent. We're the Western Europe for China, the American people, because we depend on China. And lucky for us, unbelievable as it may seem, Seton Motley has come back to the show. We're delighted to have Seton Motley. He's the president of lessgovernment.org. And we're going to be talking about chip supply in China. Seton's been on the show a number of times. Great man. Seton, welcome back to Made in America.
Appreciate it, sirs. Thank you very much.
So the more I watch what's going on, and you try and get anything, whether it's a washing machine, it took me, I don't know how long it took Neil. It took me 6 months to get it. I ordered it. It took me 6 months to get a washing machine. I can't get a car. I can't return my car. It's a lease because I don't have a car to give me. So that's not a good deal for me. That's not happening. You can't get certain engines anymore. You can't get certain technology things anymore. Options that could be safer for cars and things that you have around your house, they don't exist right now because you can't get them. Seton, we seem to be in such a conundrum going forward, and there's a lot of political leverage, geopolitical leverage that China has over us, Russia has over, Europe. I mean, where are we going with this? This is pretty dangerous, I think.
It's a race between how dangerous and how stupid it's been for half a century. I've done a lot of research on this, and I really take this back to the early 70s when Nixon went to China, and that was the beginning of big business starting to bribe D.C. into letting them out from under the United States and go overseas and make everything. But yeah, we are really, Ford and GM can't make any cars because they don't have the chips.
That's right.
This is a huge problem. I think 80% of the world's chips are made in Asia. Now, that means one of two things, either China or countries much smaller than China within China's sphere of influence. So we've outsourced our entire chip manufacturing into an area completely dominated by a country that doesn't like us very much. Not very bright policy. And you're right.
The other thing, too, is that, is that Taiwan produces a lot of chips. Taiwan.
That's a dangerous political leverage.
Yeah, because very sophisticated. As the smaller sort of things and consumer items and household goods and so forth moved from Taiwan to China, they went up the food chain and started to get into technology, and they were very successful in investing in technology. And a lot of our most sophisticated chips come from actually Taiwan. And so if you want to talk about a geopolitical problem, with what's happening between China and Taiwan and what that would look like, well, for starters, you're going to knock off a large percentage of the world's chip manufacturing, almost half.
Well, I don't think we produce more than 12% in the United States.
12% is right in the United States. It's about half in Taiwan. And remember when I said
half the chips in Taiwan,
either in China or in China's sphere of influence. Certainly, Taiwan falls under China's sphere of influence. And, I think the Russia-Ukraine thing is a complete waste of our time. But China entering Taiwan is a serious problem. And as Trump noted on the Senate floor when he was president, if China decides to do it, we can't stop them. There's nothing we can do to stop them. We're on the other side of the planet. It takes them 5 seconds to invade Taiwan, and it's over. So we've become we put ourselves way over a barrel by outsourcing this chip manufacturing to not just outsourcing it at all, which was dumb, but outsourcing it to a part of the world we have very little control over, and is ripe for complete upheaval at any given moment.
So I got to ask a question. We were talking about the 70s, and we were letting China into the WTO. Was Nixon the one who started pushing that? That was later. That was Clinton. That was Clinton. That was Clinton. But wait a minute.
Wen Ho Lee and Johnny Chung and all the Chinese money, that's what the payoff was.
Yeah, exactly. That's what that was for. But it looks like, did anyone ever pay attention to Chinese philosophy? Did anyone just look beyond the obvious and say, well, wait a minute. let's look at the psyche of the person that we're dealing with,
Right.
and maybe we're opening up a Pandora's box that we don't want to open up.
Well, the lie that was told by big business and the government officials that were aiding and abetting them was, if we trade with them, they'll open up. They'll become more open. They'll become more democratic. And they knew that was a lie. Anyone who'd been to China, if you're doing business in China, you've been to China,
Sure.
That's not how they work. That's not how they operate. It's what I said about Putin. Remember what Chris Rock said about O.J. Simpson? I'm not saying he should have killed her, but I understand. That's the way I feel about Putin. We can't keep jamming in with NATO countries 20, 30 years after the Soviet Union falls and then be shocked when he invades Ukraine. I mean, that's just know your enemy, know who you're dealing with. That's going to be a very reasonable, rational reaction if you're Vladimir Putin. Likewise with the Chinese, we knew better than to say, hey, they're going to open up with this mass exodus of U.S. jobs to China. We knew that wasn't going to happen. The people who knew China knew it wasn't going to happen, and they said it anyway because they wanted the slave labor and the cheap manufacturing prices. So that's what we're dealing with is a bunch of liars who knew better and did it anyway because their stock prices were more important than the future of the country.
I fear that was it. That's exactly it.
I'm a total cynic now, and you know what I find? The more cynical you get, the more correct I become. So go ahead.
Wait a minute. He just defined my life. That's where I reject 35% of everything.
Now I know why you and Rich get along so well.
He's my guy. I'm going to call him tonight. We're going to Capitol Grill if you could ever get into it. I've tried for weeks to get into Capitol Grill. You want to know why I can't get in? Because every New Yorker is down here in South Florida. You can't get in. I got to wait.
Yes. Where in South Florida are you?
Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, I'm across the state. I'm just east of Marco Island in a little fishing village.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Well, for not much longer, I'm selling the house and moving to Texas. But right now, I'm in the swamp. Yes, go ahead.
well, Seton, unfortunately, we're out of time, man. We're going to have to catch up with you here again soon.
Okay, listen, thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it, and enjoy the steak.
Okay, man. Be good.
Take care, Seton. We're going to be right back with much more of Made in America. We have really good information for you. If you go anywhere, you're in trouble. Welcome back to Made in America. This is Rich Rothman, along with my fellow partner and my partner for 14 years in doing this show is Neil Asbury, and I'm delighted we're all here to talk to you. Neil, this has been a very interesting time. I mean, every day we're hearing more and more about, like we were just talking about chips, and chips affects us in many, many ways, and the war in the Ukraine's affecting us. And I mean, we are such a geopolitical environment right now that no matter what happens 7,000 miles away, it's affecting us here. So I thought we would listen a little bit to someone who lives and works and represents your old backyard, and from your family being from West Virginia, right? You're from there originally.
That's right.
That's right. And Joe Manchin, of course, represents a Democrat representing, that area.
The only Democrat in the state.
The only Democrat in the state, evidently. And he goes shopping, and he's the only one in the Piggly Wiggly that's down there. They have a Piggly Wiggly. I don't think I could work at a Piggly Wiggly. I just want you to know that because I couldn't say Piggly Wiggly. Where do you work? Piggly Wiggly. That's like Milton Berle. I don't know what the deal is. So, but people have. I mean, I think Joe Manchin had a very hard year because he's been beaten up, with the Biden people and his Build Back Better, not building back better, and he and Sinema not voting for it, and all this other stuff that was going on. But when it comes to technology and it comes to hydrocarbons, Neil, and it comes to energy. Well, West Virginia is one of the top of the list states, is it not?
Of course. I mean, it's a lot of the energy. I mean, your electricity, 50% of the electricity in this country comes from coal, and a large portion of that comes from West Virginia.
That's right. And it's important because we're enjoying the light we have right now in this office.
And I'm talking about clean coal technology.
That's right.
Which, the U.S. is a leader of. I'm not talking about this stuff like this 1950s technology that they're burning coal in China and India and Brazil and these countries. that are really the problem. It's not here in the United States. In fact, we should be exporting our technology, our clean coal technology. Look, we just got to get over this. China and India are not going to change. They're going to continue to do what they're doing. Is the cheapest, most inexpensive way to power their countries. You know, they got big machines to run over there, and they're not going to sacrifice that, not for 1 minute. The foreign currency that they generate, the wealth that they generate for themselves, and certainly for the elites of the country, but also, you know, the investments that they make in their military, the investments that they make in their social services and policies, and their roads and their universities, comes from the power of the export. And to export, you need to have cheap energy, and the cheapest way is to buy dirty coal and to burn dirty coal, and they are not changing. The United States has the ability to help them to be better, to make their environments better. Hey, look, I got to tell you, you go to Shanghai, you go to Beijing, and these cities, and you're there for less than 24 hours, your throat burns, your eyes burn, and it's because of the power plants and the technology that they have.
Well, you know what? I think we should listen to, here's an MSNBC guy, Mehdi Hassan, actually went out of the way to call, well, having Manchin chair the Energy Committee, well, they basically calling that corrupt because he represents people in an energy state. So let's take a listen to this and see what you think about it.
When you look at the fact that Joe Manchin is a man who's made millions from a family coal business, and now he chairs a key energy committee and decides what stuff gets into bills to protect the climate, people would say, yeah, that is dysfunctional, that is corrupt.
Well, Joe Manchin has made some money in the coal industry. You know, West Virginia is all about the coal industry. There's been how many people in West Virginia that's made money in the coal industry? But that pales against what people like Nancy Pelosi and her family has made.
Well, what about Tom Steyer? He's a big greenie, and he made a fortune, billions of dollars in the energy industry.
And the money they made.
He's a hypocrite.
And because of their political position. How about the Clintons? If you want to talk about someone who has really gamed the system, let's talk about the Clintons and using their position. But West Virginia is a coal state. Joe Manchin comes from a coal state. And in West Virginia, you got coal. And he's an entrepreneur. He's a businessman. And he made some money off the coal industry. So what, right? So
exactly.
What? So what? But the fact is that we have the technology. We have the technology in this country to make the world a better place. We really do. And they're not going to change. India is not going to change. Brazil's not going to change. China's not going to change. Because they need access to this energy to keep their export machine running. They need it. Otherwise, their whole economy crumbles, and therefore their authoritarian governments crumble. They have to have this. So why don't we help them? Why don't we provide the cleanest, safest way possible to provide them energy in the most affordable way, which is coal? And they're going to be doing this for a generation, Rich.
Oh, easily. And at the same time we're doing that, Neil, we're also putting Russia out of business.
Well, we're putting Russia out of business, and at the same time that we're doing that, you know, we're making the world a safer place.
Well, we're out of time for the segment. Listen, when you come back for the next segment, you're going to hear something very amazing from the two of us. I'll tell you what it is later. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Made in America. We're pleased that you're here with us today. We really enjoy being with you. We're having a great show. Rich and I really, really enjoy this. It's a really, really special time for us to fire up the mics and be here and share our thoughts, our vision, our dreams, and just talk about and banter back and forth with some of the great guests that we get about what's happening in our world today. Very important that we all stay plugged in. Very important, especially over the summer and into the fall and in this November when we're going to have a very important midterm election. Every election is the most important election in a lifetime. We always say that, the next election, but this is very, very important.
You said plugged in.
We got to... Yes.
You went green on me for a second. Just want you to know that.
Yeah, well, hey, look, I think, being green is great. I don't have any problem with that. But it's going to take time, and the technology is going to have to develop, and it's going to be cost effective. But in the meantime, we have access to great energy sources, which are also clean energy sources. And as we go and economically it becomes viable, there's going to be all kinds of things that we're capable of doing.
Listen, people will want it when the market's right. It's how every product's worked for the last 100 and some odd years.
Right.
And it just goes nuts when everybody wants it. And it works.
And it does. And
the business plan works.
And all the money, and you don't need to have a government subsidies, and you don't need to have American taxpayers. You don't have to do that. Like all these solar panels and stuff. Are there solar panels on everybody's houses right now? No, there's not. I see very few houses with solar panels. Why? Because the technology is not yet there. It just doesn't make economic sense.
Yeah, I have no
someday,
interest in it.
Hey, I think it's wonderful that you capture the energy from the sun, and that's going to just power everything. But I think it's wonderful.
You know what excites me? Hydrogen. Hydrogen is limitless. It's all over there. It's everywhere you have water, you have that. So look at the oceans and so forth. If we could get that, and we're just starting to get that more economically viable and commercialable, then hydrogen, to me, more than solar panels and the windmills, I think that's spectacular. There is no emissions that will hurt anybody with that.
It's coming.
Oh, it is coming. Yeah.
And other things we can't even imagine right now. But it's going to take some time. And in the meantime, we have to get from here to there.
Well, you know what? Stuart Varney the other day made a really astute comment. This is on clip number 13. He says, basically, you and I and everybody out there listening to us, we're paying for the green crowd's dreams. And as you're pointing out very aptly, the dreams are something that's going to come, not right now, and we're going to pay a huge price for it. Why don't we listen to Stuart for a second?
You are paying the price for the climate crowd's green dreams. How many times you heard me say that? Green policies mean you pay through the nose for fossil fuels. Here's a classic example, just announced this morning. Germany is getting ready to ration natural gas. Of course, this has to do with Russian supplies. I got that. But it's the Greens, the environmentalists, who got Germany into this mess in the first place. Angela Merkel banned fracking years ago, and she cancelled plans for a terminal to take American nat gas the very week that Donald Trump lost the election. Result, in Germany right now, nat gas costs the equivalent of $30 per million BTUs. It's just over $5 in America.
What an amazing difference.
That's amazing. I mean, just think about the wealth and the money that's being spent on that. And, for what? I don't know. For why? I don't get it.
Let me ask you a question. If there was another president in the White House, first of all, this wouldn't have happened if you had Trump or Reagan in the White House. Just wouldn't have happened.
Well, if he won, then obviously, they're going to be buying a lot of American natural gas because Germany needed to buy more from the U.S. to help bring the trade deficit down.
If Germany needed to build terminal, now they were saying, well, we can't get it right away because, they don't have the terminals because Merkel didn't build the terminals. But if we're on a war footing, as in Project Warp Speed, with the President Trump, he would get those terminals built in months. He would make it happen. Not in months, maybe half a year. Maybe not half a year, maybe 3/4 of a year. But he would do it on a war footing and make it happen. The same thing with the development of our fuels that we have right here. The energy that we have right here could go all over the world, and we would, well, as I said it last week, this is like World War I. The Yanks are coming, the Yanks are coming. They're drumming everywhere. That's what we're all about. And it would be so good for America. It is so frustrating that we can't get to that point with this president.
Yeah, and he's, talking about it.
Everyone knows that.
Talking about it, but it's just not there. He's blaming the energy industry. Oh, they're big profits. They're doing
big
this.
Profits.
They're
How
not
dare
doing
they?
this. They're not doing that. They're not doing.
They're not
this.
drilling.
They're not.
They're
drilling.
not drilling.
Well, they're not giving.
They
them
can't even get the
leases.
funding for it now because his people said we don't want funding from the banks going to the guys who drill. So he put a kibosh on that. It's really vile, very vile.
Well, Rich, unfortunately, we're out of time, but we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.